Hello! In this clip from our Justia webinar, Unlocking the Potential of Non-Stenographic Depositions and AI, Charles Peckham and Carl Seelbach discuss what non-stenographic depositions are, their role in the practice of law, and why you should care about them. If you'd like to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
So why should I care about non-stenographic depositions? Charles, you want to take this one as well?
Listen, I will tell you that the real question and the real issue about non-stenographic depositions and the pushback is, are you getting clear testimony under oath? And now the question is, can you do it at a reasonable cost? Can you have access to justice more easily streamlined and at a lower cost? Can you provide a better service, take more depositions at a lower cost, and provide better services to your clients, and therefore present better cases? But the first thing I think, of course, is the cost of stenographic depositions have gotten out of control, and part of that is supply and demand. So it's just hard to find reporters these days, and the costs have gone through the ceiling. Carl, I think you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the costs are a big driver here. They're not the only driver. There's also some speed and efficiency gains to be had, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I pulled deposition invoices, and these were a couple of years old at this point, and just tried to calculate how much is my firm spending, how much are my clients spending to capture testimony. And by the time I added it up, it surprised me. It was about $800 per hour of testimony, transcript plus video plus sync. And that was without any type of rush fees, without getting a same-day rough, anything like that, no expedite, just kind of a breakdown on the cost. And, you know, it also was a little odd to me. The invoices came in piecemeal. That's very common from court reporting agencies. You get one invoice for the transcript, separate invoice for the video, sometimes another invoice if you've ordered anything a la carte. You know, you get charged extra for attending a Zoom room, for, you know, shipping and handling and all sorts of nickel and dime fees. So it's just, be careful, take a look at the price sheet, make sure you know what you're paying for and how much it all adds up to. And, you know, I don't think Charles and I are alone. These are quotes from a Facebook Texas lawyers group, where people were kind of openly venting about just how expensive it has become to take a deposition. And, you know, I think people are looking for solutions, and they're using solutions, everything from recording it themselves to using software to help them solve the problem, to unfortunately sometimes not taking depositions because their clients can't afford it, which is very unfortunate as well.
It hasn't quite gotten to this point where it's a requirement of lawyers to use non-stenographic depositions and AI, but I don't think that's far away, especially when we're, and I know you're going to talk about this a little bit more, but you may have an ethical responsibility to lower costs for your client, be it corporate or individual. And when you're getting a better service at a cheaper cost, you may have an obligation to offer this and to talk to your client about it. I'm sorry, Carl, go ahead.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, we do have an ethical duty to be good stewards of our clients' money. And, you know, when you can potentially capture testimony at a fraction of the cost of doing it the old-fashioned way, it does raise a question of, you know, what is in the best interest of the client. And so that's something to consider as well. I also think that, you know, the one important thing to point out here is stenographers are, you know, extremely qualified individuals, and there's a shortage. And frankly, any young people that are listening, you know, stenography school would be a great option because they're in high demand. And I think part of what Charles and I are really talking about is providing alternatives, not trying to replace stenographers as much as trying to augment and fill the gap, because it's real. This is the graph on the screen is actually a self-reported graph from the court reporting industry, from the NCRA. And I think the graphic was actually done by one of the national court reporting companies, but there's certainly a shortage. It's only getting worse because the number of litigated claims is growing and the number of stenographers is shrinking. So, at some point, you will probably have a hearing or a trial or a deposition where, it has to be canceled or postponed because you can't get a stenographer. So the question is, well, what then? So I think that's part of what is driving this. There's also, there's other benefits to this as well, and we'll talk about some of those in just a minute. But when you begin to capture testimony using modern software, it unlocks a lot of other possibilities. And so we'll demonstrate some of those in just a minute, what the technology can allow you to do as a litigator. The speed is also a big deal. And I'll give you one quick example on that. I have a plaintiff's lawyer friend of mine in San Antonio who told me he was able to take depositions non-stenographically in the morning using a modern software platform. He got the video synced record back within an hour. So over the lunch break, he created video clips from the morning deposition. And then in the afternoon deposition, he actually used the video clips as evidence, as exhibits to cross-examine another witness in the same case. And so that's just one of the things that you can begin to unlock with the benefits of non-stenographic testimony capture is speed. And I think
that's not an outlandish use. That's something that can be done today, and you can put that in your quiver right away.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And then just to answer another question live, I think Shirley had a question or maybe a point that yellow on the map were stipulations and red are states that have not implemented it. I believe that is correct. Again, for the most up-to-date analysis of each state, or if you want to dive deeper, and I know we had one question about some Texas rules around, whether you can do this in Texas or not. Some of this gets a bit nuanced. You certainly can do it in Texas. Attorneys are allowed to record depositions themselves. At the end of the day, a lot of these software solutions are ultimately doing that. They are empowering the attorneys to record depositions using their own equipment, laptops, and their own finger to press the record button on the deposition. And we think it's overdue. It's overdue to give attorneys the power to do this themselves. And certainly, we're happy to have those conversations. We view it as competition is healthy for the marketplace. There's high demand for stenographers, but there should also be cost-effective alternatives for people who can't afford stenographers as well. So if you want to get into the weeds on the rules, please email support@scribe.ai. That's Scribe with a K. And we are certainly happy to have that dialogue into the kind of nitty-gritty, getting deep into the weeds on the rules. All right, Charles, you've done this for many years, even before we were doing it by Zoom. So let's talk a little bit about how to do it.
Absolutely. So we talked about it before, but it's always good to get a stipulation. And I think there's a deposition notice on the next slide. We'll come to that in just a second. So I'm not going to talk about that just yet. But you need to decide how you're going to record it. Are you going to do audio, video, or use some digital tool for that, and then set that up? And the question is, are you going to do it yourself, or are you not going to do it yourself? In other words, are you going to hire a company like Scribe to do it, or are you going to try to manage it yourself? And I think I want to show you what I did before COVID, before Zoom got big, and before Scribe was on the scene. But go ahead to the notice.
Yeah, and if you need me to stop sharing because you want to show props, I can do that too.
I'll do that. I'll do that in a minute.
Tell me when, Charles.
Yes, I'll do that in a minute. So what you have here is the notice, and this is what I do. And I think I know Scribe didn't take this notice from me. I think this may have been Scribe's sample notice, but mine is very, very similar. It's going to be recorded non-stenographically. The other party can bring their own stenographer if they would like at their expense. I typically include who's going to notarize. In fact, in Texas, I've not had a whole lot of pushback, but I'm a notary. And so I will say sometimes I'm going to swear in the witness and see if there's any pushback. I typically get a stipulation on that because that's a little iffy. But that's that. If you want to go to the next one, Carl.
Yep, gotcha.
So the idea is to get everything correctly recorded so that it is usable in the court process. So you want something that's going to capture the audio. Certainly, if you're going to use Zoom, capture the video, get it clean, get it clear. So like Scribe is a one-stop solution that has all of this put together, including notarizing and the rest. But Carl, if you'll go to the next one, but I'm going to get off of it. I'm going to ask you to stop it here in a second. There we go.
And you want prop time. Okay.
It's prop time.
Show and tell.
So, and you talked, Carl, about showing up in a deposition and a guy pulls out a tripod. Well, I used to use the tripod, and I would take with me in person a video camera, just a simple video camera that had a hard drive, set up my microphones to everybody just like a videographer court reporter would do. And then I would back it up with an audio. And so I would go ahead and just take the deposition. I'd let opposing counsel cross-examine if that's what was happening in the deposition. Then afterwards, I would take it back, and you can stop the video now. You can go back to the slide.
Go back to the slides. Okay, yes.
Pretty mug.
Well, let me find my button.
Okay, so then I would go back to my office. I would upload it to a site that would take the video and the audio and transcribe it into a transcription, right? And then I would provide an affidavit saying how it was taken, that it was taken under oath, etc. And then I would provide both the video and I think it was an AI transcript, and my affidavit to the opposing side, just like a court reporter would do in providing everybody a copy of the deposition. Now, I would do that at no cost. I'd do that for free. Well, the cost of doing that was minimal, right, except for the transcript. But it wasn't terribly professional looking. So that was sort of the predicament. So now that we've got Scribe, I'm using it. And you want to go to the next one, Carl, I'll let you talk about this, but it compares, I think, the costs of doing it with a court reporter versus through Scribe.
Yeah, and before we get to that, we had another question, and I'm trying to take them as best we can live. The question came up, any questions from opposing counsel on authenticity? And so, Charles, what we're here to kind of advocate or educate on is there's a lot of ways to do this. And you just showed a tripod and a camera and explained how you used to do this just by recording it yourself on a tape or on a disc. And that certainly is a permissible way to do it, and states that permit non-stenographic recording of testimony. And you can also use software solutions. Scribe is one of several. There's others out there too, and so that also is an option. So to talk us through, Charles, to answer the question about authenticity, I guess one, have you ever had anybody press you on that, pre-COVID or post?
No. And I will tell you that can be a real question when you're talking about AI manipulation of testimony and the rest. But remember, you're a court officer. You have an ethical obligation to do that, and you're providing a notice. You're providing the other side the ability to record it how they will, or with a court reporter. And they're going to attend, right? Opposing counsel is going to attend. So no, I have never had a problem with authenticity at all. But of course, you have to be, you don't want to manipulate it, right? You have an ethical responsibility not to do that.
And I think one of the things that will help you a lot, whether you decide to go full DIY and record it yourself with software or with a camcorder, or if you decide to use a vendor, is, if you provide very promptly a copy of the video recording to the opposing counsel, a courtesy copy, right? You're not charging them for it. You're like, hey, here is a copy of the video. You typically are going to eliminate, I think, any risk of an authenticity challenge. And so that would be my strong recommendation to you, as well as if you're looking for a vendor to solve this problem for you, make sure that they offer a courtesy copy of the non-stenographic record to your opposing counsel. I also think that's kind of refreshing in a world where you feel like we're being charged for everything, to actually turn around and say, hey, I'm trying to be more efficient. I'm doing this using software. I'm doing this using a video camera. And here, opposing counsel, here's a courtesy copy of that record that we just captured. And so that's something to look for when you're trying to decide how to do this and what company may be able to help you.
Carl, two things real quick. First, on the authenticity question, you would have exactly the same question with a court reporter as without one on authenticity.
Yeah,
so I don't really think it's an issue. There was a question, Carl, out there about uploading to the internet for transcription.
Yeah.
And I think I never had a problem with it, and I never really was concerned about it terribly. But there is an issue. I don't know if we're going to cover it a little bit about closed AI and open AI, or if you want to try to cover that now.
Well, why don't we touch on it briefly now and again later? The question that was posed was, when you upload to the internet for transcription, are there any concerns on the security of the information remaining with those who are only authorized to access it? That is a great question, and that is absolutely should be a concern, should be something that you're thinking about. I would give this explanation. It's really no different than the email server provider that you use, or the cloud management company that you use, or any of the online tools that you use. You should always make sure that you have trust and confidence in the privacy policies of the companies that you are working with. So I think to answer that question, when I have uploaded things for transcription, whether that's to Scribe or prior to starting that company, some other company solution, I tend to always look at their privacy policies to make sure that they're using best practices and how they manage that data, just like we do with court reporting agencies as well. Several of them have transcription tools that they use also in connection with their online repositories. And so I think anytime we're using the internet to transmit data back and forth, we should always make sure that we're using a trusted vendor that has best practices in place for that. And I know that's also a concern, as we'll talk about this more in a minute, the use of AI tools, particularly generative AI, to make sure that if you're going to use that in your practice, and I think you should, I use it in my own practice, make sure you're using vendors who have agreements and policies in place that they're not going to train on your data. They're not going to share information that you submit with, some other attorney or some other company or law firm. So that's a great question.
It is.
Cost. So I know we said we'd answer this one that came up earlier from Shirley. And thank you for posing questions, by the way. It always makes the presentation a lot more fun. So thanks to everyone for the questions. I realize some of them were a little deeper into the rules than maybe this presentation calls for, but we're certainly happy to answer those questions in a follow-up email. So cost comparison here, again, this is just to show that in cases that are cost sensitive, you can save a lot of money doing this in a more modern way. Scribe happens to be the example on the screen. I will tell you, in full transparency, you can get this cost down to even a fraction of the price on the right-hand column, the Scribe column, doing it yourself. So if cost is your primary driver, you can drop the cost down to, low hundreds, just doing a full DIY process.
Earl, I want to insert something here.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't, if you do it yourself, you can take the video transcript, or the non-stenographic, video. You don't have to transcribe it right away, right? You can transcribe it when the time comes that it's necessary for hearing. That's one issue, but I think that the question really had to do with recovery of costs. And absolutely, this is a deposition cost that can be recovered like any other cost in a case. I have one case right now. Unfortunately, I lost. I know never really happens, but I did. I lost a case. And the other side was seeking, they had brought a court reporter to back up the deposition that I had noticed non-stenographically. Now, we're still waiting on a court order, but I objected to their use of a court reporter because it was a duplication that was unnecessary. So you even have the ability to do that potentially, but we're still waiting on a ruling. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carl.
No, you're fine. So the other thing to look for in your when you're being charged for a deposition, you want to make sure you get what you're paying for and you don't get charged for other things. So this was my review of depositions that I have paid for, and we paid for this one. And one thing to look for is, are you being charged for the testimony, pages, which, most court reporting agencies advertise by page rate, and that's fine. That makes sense. They are skilled. They are typing as fast as they can and trying to keep up with everything that's said. But what I found when I started digging into the invoices is that I was actually being charged page rates for things that the court reporter didn't type. And so for things like the automated word index that comes at the end, the cover pages. And so, in this example, I was charged for 135 pages where the testimony ended on page 109 and 100 pages where the testimony ended on page 78. So, you think about the percentage of fluff, whatever you want to call it, it's significant. And so make sure that you know what you're getting. I call that BS fees. And I think, our job as litigators, as well as good stewards of our clients' resources, is to make sure we avoid them. And so I think that, not all court reporting agencies are like that, by the way. There are some wonderful court reporting agencies out there. One that I use sometimes for my in-person depositions is Esquire. I'm a big fan of theirs. I know some of the executives there. But there's a lot of good court reporting companies out there as well. Just make sure you know what you're getting and that you know what you're paying for. And so cost and time savings, this slide actually I don't think is fully updated, but it gives you a glimpse. You can save real money doing it non-stenographically. And so this is at my firm. We have 15 attorneys at my firm who are regularly taking or defending depositions. We have saved our clients a lot of money using Scribe since it launched. And we've also saved ourselves a lot of time. And I think sometimes for the litigator, particularly when I'm not the one paying ultimately the expenses, the client's paying the expenses, the time savings is really awesome to be able to get a transcript back and a video back the same day you take the deposition, and then have a final transcript within about 3 to 5 days. It speeds things up. It makes it easier and faster for me to digest the deposition and move on to the next task in the case. And I think that's also a big part of this, and probably the number one thing that I hear in feedback from talking to attorneys who are interested in efficiencies and see the cumulative effect that this can have across a law firm, not just one case, but when you do it across 100 cases or 500 cases or 1,000, you begin to speed up your entire conveyor belt. And so can court reporting companies get you a faster transcript in 3 weeks? Of course they can. Sometimes they do it by default without charging you more. I think sometimes I'll get it, 2 weeks is usually probably the best I've seen, just default. But the painful thing is a lot of times if you want it fast, if you need it fast, you get charged like 100% markup or something like that to get it fast. And I think
I have something here too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago I was in trial. The court ordered me to take a deposition. We were objecting that we didn't have access to a witness. So the court ordered me on a Thursday afternoon after 5 to take a deposition of somebody at 10 in the jury room at 10 a.m. the next morning. We found no court reporter. There was no court reporter to be found. I contacted Scribe. We had an hour-long deposition at 10 a.m. I had the transcript. Now, this says 3 to 5 days, but I had the full transcript ready to go by 1 o'clock when we restarted the trial. Now, I know that's a speedy thing, and Scribe promises 3 to 5, but it was quick, it was done, and we have it.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next clip.